Welcome to everyone who has joined us today for this presentation. I'm Linda Scher. I'm the Division Chief for Clinical Research in the Department of Surgery, and I'm going to discuss today what our clinical division has done over the last 6 years. First of all, I've been very fortunate to work in a department with elite surgeons who are taking care of all kinds of disease processes and are very attractive to industry sponsors who wish to conduct studies here for the advancement of knowledge about these diseases. As a department, it's actually not okay to stand still. We must keep learning and advancing the respective fields. Towards this end, it's the responsibility of our group of surgeons to contribute to the growth of surgical fields through research pertaining to surgical strategies, new drugs, new devices, and developments and methods of improving outcomes, not just short-term outcomes, long-term outcomes, as well as quality of life. The mission of our division is to create a foundation to be able to implement and conduct clinical trials and other research according to good clinical practice. Our job is to look at the protocols that come in to make sure that they are good studies for us to do and that it is feasible for us to do them, to assist with the budgeting and contracting, to prepare all the regulatory documents, including the Institutional Review Board paperwork, to coordinate the study and to match the data to assure that our sponsors, as well as the FDA, are receiving good data that can be easily validated. This is how our division works. This is a little rough sketch of our division. It's comprised of a division chief, myself, an associate chief, Dr. Julietta Momely, and a staff of regulatory personnel and research coordinators. While this is a bit of a complicated slide, what it boils down to is when the study principal investigator receives a protocol from a sponsor and wants to proceed with a research protocol and to establish an ability to do the research, he hands it over to our division, where we then proceed first to do a feasibility analysis, second to determine if this is a good study for our department and for our patients, and then we move forward with the preparation of the regulatory paperwork, as I said, the budgeting and contracting. We then move ahead with the study initiation. We arrange the study visits as well as the closeout at the end of the study. Our coordinators are very active in working with the investigator to screen and enroll patients, to coordinate the visits and all of the institutional resources, and to assure that all the data and the samples get to the sponsor in a timely fashion. So what kind of research are we doing? Well, this is just a few examples. It would be difficult to discuss all of the 63 studies that we're doing, but just to summarize it, we're looking at new drugs and medical strategies. For example, new immunosuppressive agents to help us prevent rejection and transplants, drugs that can help the kidneys heal better after major surgeries, including heart surgery, how to manage complications in heart disease, such as atrial fibrillation, and how to manage carotid artery disease. We look at new devices, new valves that can be put in without opening the chest, vascular stents that can be placed through an artery without actually having to open the patient up, new types of grafts, and new devices for the gastrointestinal and colorectal surgeons. We also support a foundation for NIH studies. The division has all of the components that are needed to conduct NIH-funded trials. We have team members that are specialists in getting the contracting done. We have coordinators with vast experience in NIH-funded studies. We have a statistician. And when we put all of this information together in our NIH applications, it is very attractive to the NIH reviewers. In addition to the laboratory grants, which we are supporting, surgeons also currently are conducting 7 NIH-supported clinical trials. This is just a little view of what's happened in our department. Basically, as you can see, when we first began, we had 41 trials. We've gone to 63 in 2019. And in fact, with COVID, it has not actually slowed down. We continue to do our studies. But more importantly, there's been very little change in our study staff. We've kept a steady staff. We've increased a few numbers. We're in the process of hiring another 1 or 2 coordinators now. But not only have we increased the numbers, we've actually increased the number of people enrolled into each trial. So while it appears that we're looking at slightly over 20 more studies, we're actually looking at hundreds of more patients who have benefited from this plan. Just to give you an idea of why this plan works, when you get put into a situation that we've been in over the last year, many institutions have had to shut down their clinical trials and have had difficulty getting new studies, particularly COVID studies, begun in their institutions. We actually were able to adapt rapidly because we have a team that is ready for these type of crises. And in the adaptation, people began to work from home immediately in March. They called all of their study sponsors to discover what kind of amendments are necessary to provide data and yet keep the patients safe. We looked at all our studies and we prioritized what is most important for the care of our patients. We set up remote patient visits and we implemented a team approach so that we could have social distancing in the office. This allowed us to move forward not only in continuing the studies that were so important for our patient care, but also for implementing COVID studies. And to that end, we have been very active in studying COVID disease, in studying various aspects, including collecting samples for future studies, but also looking at new treatments. We have an combined NIH industry-sponsored stem cell study for patients that are intubated and severely ill. For patients with mild to moderate disease, we have an industry study to control the inflammatory process, and another NIH study, which is called a platform study, where we can evaluate very rapidly new drugs one after the other with other sites in the country. And finally, it is very important as surgeons, we have access to tissue and blood samples that are so important to the basic scientists and the translational scientists to study what causes disease, how can we stop the disease process, how can we better treat the disease process. To that end, we were very fortunate to obtain a very, very generous donation from Mr. Norton Herrick, through which we were able to start the Norton Herrick Surgical Biorepository, where we collect blood, fluid, and tissue samples. They're stored at minus 180 degrees, which allows them to be stored for an indefinite period of time. It will hold over 30,000 specimens, and this repository is considered a general use repository. We are already supplying specimens for investigators in this institution as well as outside institution, and we plan to continue to do this for a very long time to come. I want to thank you for your attention. I hope in the future we can actually meet face to face instead of in this situation. But I also will be available at the end to answer questions.